what's up? This is Flex Wheeler with another segment of Monday Night Muscle, and I got my host here, Sugar Sean Ray. No adduction needed whatsoever. This guy was a fearless competitor of mine, but speaking of fearless competitor, our first guest is Steve Kuclo. How's it going, big homie?
Man, doing great. Excited to be on your show, man. Finally.
Look at you, all clean shaved and everything.
Hey, man, we try to represent.
Texas, man, you've been missing in action. You were off the calendar for 2020. A lot of stuff was going on, and you must have had more important things going on because we did not see you on the stage, did we?
Well, we were at the Arnold Classic, and obviously before, literally was the week before everything got shut down and the madness happened. So it was, I think last year just to me was a coin toss of whether things were going to happen, not going to happen, and I think I just played it off like just to reduce the amount of stress on myself to be like, is the show going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Am I going to prep and then no shows? I just said, let's take this year, focus on kind of just healing up a little bit and then go into 2021 strong.
So you've been really busy with your business adventures that you have. A little shameless plug, Shark Tank, that you've been on Shark Tank. So what's going on with that?
Man, that's going good. I think a lot of it has just been a lot of learning business, how it's done, coming from the fitness world and seeing guys like you and Jay Cutler and guys that really learn how to monetize themselves and their own brand and their likeness. That you have to do that in this sport. I think you guys know that. I think a lot of people think you turn pro and you're going to get handed a 7-figure paycheck, and that's not really what it entails. So, we used our following, we used what we knew in business and our connections of people we knew, and started our own brand that we were on Shark Tank with, the Booty Queen Apparel with my wife, and that's been a lot of fun and a lot of headaches at the same time, and it, learned a lot about business and how to run it. And then we're expanded into other things. We got 3 bodybuilding shows now that we promote. We kind of got our hands in a few things. We're trying to start and expand this what we do.
Well, let's not gloss over the business that you started with your wife. I mean, it's only Amanda Latona. Hello, and I don't think you're the model in the booty shorts. I don't imagine, Steve.
No,
so
I'd like to see that.
You're making an understatement. You got one of the hottest chicks out there. Take her off the market. Make her your wife. But let's go back to the beginning, man. You're not an overnight sensation. You won a few shows along the way. Former USA overall champion. That's where you turned pro. What year was that?
2011.
Right.
USA
10 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
Flex Wheeler, another USA champion back in 1992. You remember?
Yeah.
Of course, I was there, fool.
Yeah.
And then you won I believe you won on a Europa Pro show along the way.
That was my first pro win, yes, sir.
Yeah, I was there. I saw that. Take us down the road. I was there in Brazil when you won the Brazil Arnold Classic.
That was another career highlight, winning the Arnold Classic in Brazil. Obviously, a lot of people knew the story that happened with that whole debacle of coming home and on the airplane and all that.
No, not everybody does, Steve. Listen, I think that was right around when the internet was getting hot, but there's a lot of people that don't know the story. I was on that flight. Give us the short version of after you won that contest in Brazil.
Because I'm not aware of it, actually.
Yeah, Flex wasn't on the flight either.
So, I guess the backstory of me, I spent, a good 11 years as a firefighter paramedic. I worked for the city of Dallas for 10 of those. And so I had a medical training, and at the time of that show, I was still working full-time as a firefighter medic. Win the show out in Brazil, and we're all coming home. We're all on the same flight, not a lot of flights to Brazil. And I'm kind of in the mode of like, man, I get to unwind, get to relax, have a drink, have some food. I want to just chill.
Right.
And, the flight attendants make an announcement and say, is anybody medically trained?
Right away, here? Too, like a half hour into the flight.
It wasn't long.
Yeah.
So I kind of looked back and didn't see anybody stepping up at this point. So I'm like, all right, I'll get up and go check it out, what's going on. And there was a young lady in distress, probably around 30, with her what appeared to be her husband and a young child.
2 rows behind me, yeah.
Yeah, right there. Went and kind of talked to her, and she wasn't, kind of real cooperative at all, but he kind of assessed her vitals. I talked to the flight attendant or the airline medical director on the phone and kind of told him what I saw and what was going on. And he's like, just let her rest a little bit, see what's going on, give her some fluid and just, see if she feels better. And that's what she wanted to do. She said, I have to go to the bathroom.
Right.
So she ended up going to the bathroom. She came back, and I'd say probably a half hour after that, the flight attendant at this point, I'm ready to just crash. I'm ready to fall asleep. Just
it's
relax.
a long weekend for you. Yeah.
Flight attendant runs up to me, like shakes me, and I'm like kind of half asleep. And she's like, "We need you." And I'm like, "Oh, great." So flip on the switch. Like, all right, I got to put on my other work, hat now. And I'm not thinking I'm my EMT hat.
Trying to get the alcohol out of your system real quick.
Run to the back of the plane, and she's out. She's unconscious, doesn't have a pulse. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah. No pulse?
No pulse at this point. Like, she's out. Wow. So I took her, I lifted her up, put her over my shoulder, took her to the back of the plane, started CPR and our full, protocol that we would do with starting an IV and everything. And I actually had a lady that was going through her school to be a doctor was on the plane as well. So she helped me out. And we worked her for about 45 minutes before we landed a plane in I think where we landed.
We wound up getting diverted to Costa Rica while you were doing this.
Costa Rica.
I was on my bucket list to go to Costa Rica. I didn't want to go under these circumstances.
Right.
But now we reroute to Costa Rica for this medical emergency. Now, Steve, what I didn't find out from you, although I did talk to you a little bit when we landed, like, she was DOA, like on the plane before we touched the ground.
Yeah, and we did. I mean, I did everything we could. It was 45 minutes straight of just CPR, and I got an IV started on there. We were administering the drugs that you give in a CPR protocol, and just did everything we could. And there was nothing it was a shame that.
Wait a minute. So she passed away?
I've been flying for 30 years. It was the first time I ever experienced something like that. But Steve, what I didn't ask you, and I wanted to, did they ever even question you when we got on the ground in Costa Rica? Did you share everything with the people on the ground?
I did talk to a few of the police and the fire that were on scene. They did ask us some questions like what we did and what we saw, and obviously they're going to assess everything. And then I did get some phone calls later from like American Airlines and attorneys, and it's about a year ago I got a phone call from an attorney in Brazil asking if I would come to testify for a case in this, and I said, I don't want anything to do with it at this point.
You did everything you could.
I'm not getting involved.
Wow, I had no idea whatsoever. I mean, obviously I had a whole bunch of close calls as I get a little shaken. But
you've been there, Flex.
Her husband and her child were on the plane. Oh my God.
Yeah, didn't make it. And what's ironic? I Googled that because I wanted to find out, was there more to that story? When I went to Google it, it happened a year before to another person coming from Brazil. I think in the past there's been some issues where people would swallow drugs, and while they were transporting them, they'd be kind of like mules.
Yep.
Do you think any of that might have played into it? Because
hard to say, but I'd say that is definitely not off the table.
Yeah.
I think just because of that, the scenario and just the poverty level in Brazil, a lot of people don't know. It's like, there's either uber rich or uber poor, and people do extreme things sometimes to, just to take care of their families. And if that was the case, it would be very sad. Either way, I mean, regardless. But
I did a write-up on you after that, man, because you're on top of the world with Arnold Schwarzenegger there in Brazil. What year was that? 2015 or
2014? 2014.
You're on the top of the world winning this competition, and then there you are being a medic, and of course she didn't make it, and it's no fault of your own. But nonetheless, your career pushed forward. You plodded forward. You're not infamous for that. I mean, you did what you're trained to do, and then you went on from Brazil. Where did you go after that? Did you wind up in the victory circle later on again somewhere?
I've won 5 total pro shows that year. Went to Olympia, and I think that's the year I really made my kind of statement where I cracked that top 10 finally.
Yeah.
Went on to win the California Pro, and then I won the Indy Pro twice. I won the first 2 years of that show, so it's a little bit kind of memory lane to go.
Was all of this with Hani Rambod in your corner? Because I know you work with him. Was he working with you?
Hani, I worked for the Europa and the Arnold, Brazil, that I won. And then I worked with George Farah for California.
George, that's right.
And then for the last 2 Indies, I worked with Gina Davis.
So speaking of the Olympia, it's coming up. What are your plans? Are you going to try to get ready for the Olympia? Who are you currently working with as far as coach-wise? Give us some update on that.
Well, I was kind of waiting to see how shows obviously got laid out this year. The big target was, let's go do the Arnold, because obviously I like the Arnold, and Arnold kind of, that curveball hit us with being moved from what we thought March, and then they said July, and then we're here in September, and I don't even know if it's going to happen.
So come on, it sounds like you're leading into some bad news for me.
No.
Are we see you on stage this year?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Right.
So through all that, kind of a little taking a little wind out of the sails. And I like to be strategic, as you know. If you're going to compete and you're doing Olympia later in the year, you hate to compete all year long and diet all that time. It's hard on the body.
Right.
So for me, I decided, I saw that they just announced about 2 or 3 weeks ago that they're going to have a Texas Pro Show. And the last time they had that was 2012 at the Europa when I won it. That was the last Texas Pro Show. So Freddie Mac, and he goes, man, I think we're going to make this happen. And he called me a few days later, and he goes, man, we're having the show. You in? I said, 100%, man.
Why am I
your
thinking this
hometown.
is on June the 19th? Is this the
August 14th.
Okay, August. All right.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
June 19th to Europa that Ed Parisot's doing.
Yeah, but they don't have open men there, so.
So who are you going to be working with coach-wise this time?
August 7th, I think it is.
Gina Davis. So this will be the fourth year.
So let's back up, Steve. You like to just throw stuff out there. Gina Davis. That doesn't sound like Dorian Yates. Who the hell is Gina Davis? It sounds like
I never heard of her, actually.
What? How big is he? Who is he? I'm assuming.
No. Gina is a female trainer out of Oklahoma.
Tell me about her.
She's in Oklahoma City. She was an IFBB pro in the early 2000s. Did really well. Had an amazing physique for that era. She retired and started training full time. I saw her bring a few guys to stage that were just kind of mediocre bodybuilders and make them look really good. And to me, that was really impressive. A lot of these coaches, they take somebody like
who they already know that's going to do great.
That's a diamond, and they're polishing it. To me, if you could take a coal and turn it into a diamond, that's a whole lot better.
Like your boy Chad Nichols.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
So Gina takes you from Raj. She's making you into something.
She is.
I have to say that you're an unpolished diamond already. You're definitely no coal, bro. So you got to give yourself. I got to give you more credit.
Well, he also has you do have a resume.
Yeah.
I mean, Gina's not working with a scrub here.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So I had her and I got on a phone call. We talked for a while and I kind of questioned her on a few things, and her ideologies and her processes followed very much of what I agreed with.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I was going to try something I had no idea or just some wacko crazy voodoo diet. She really is. She taps in a little bit of old school with very much like some science too.
What about the training? Does she have anything to do with your training?
She's heavily involved in the training, and to me, there was like 3 factors that went into like my prep or my career as a bodybuilder. It was diet, nutrition. I mean, there's only so much food you can eat, and then when you're prepping, there's kind of like one formula that pretty much works for you.
Okay.
There's the supplementation route, which I don't want to push myself to kill myself kind of thing.
Understood.
And then number 3 was training. And so she really threw a wrench into my training, what I was doing, really revamped the whole thing and has done a really good job at kind of transforming and improving the physique and the parts that I really wanted to improve.
So we're going to see something very explosive and different from Steve come August, my favorite month of the year because that's my birthday. So
what's your birthday? I'm the 15th. That's
23rd, damn it, you got me again. So we're gonna have
past 56
we're gonna have to race and get this all out.
Come on, let's do it.
I want to see what that Corvette is all about, brother.
So listen, beyond your horoscope, Steve. Let's get some vitals. What is the height and weight? How much are you weighing today?
I'm floating the high 280s right now.
Is that going to go up? Is that going to go up?
I'll probably get up in the 290s as I start increasing my food. I like to grow into the show. It lasts probably 3 or 4 years. I've done it that way, and I really like it. I usually start my prep like around 280, bring my weight up into the 90s, and then I get on stage at about 285 to 280.
And how old are you now? How old are you today?
35 today.
So go. Happy birthday, brother.
You're right there where I retired. My career was over. So how long are we going to see? You got another 5 years in you? Or what's the plan? What's the end game?
My thing is I say I got gas in the tank. Yeah. I'm not like, man, I'm just kind of burned out, just going through the motions. I'm still motivated. I'm excited to get on stage. I think I have a few bucket list things. I think my goal would be to win one of the big titles, whether it's the Arnold or Olympia. I mean, everybody wants to win Olympia, but the Arnold would be a title that I could kind of hang my hat on and say, I made a big statement and I could leave a legacy in the sport that will be remembered.
And the best you've done in the Olympia is 6th place, correct?
Correct.
And so that's not in your economy. I imagine that every bodybuilder says, I want to be Mr. Olympia one day, and you're saying, I want to win the Arnold. The guys that have won the Arnold also, some of them have won the Olympia, except for me and Flex.
That's kind of been the trend the last few years. If you look, like how Brandon Witt did the Arnold one.
Big Ramy.
Ramy, a lot of guys have done that and done very well. So that's kind of the path I'm trying to follow.
Yeah.
And if the Olympia title comes with it, I mean, that's the ultimate goal, obviously. But I'm going to just work as hard as I can to get there.
Well, have you started your prep already? You said you worked with it before. Is anything going to be different now?
Yeah, we're about 16 weeks out at this point.
Okay.
So I'm just, for me, like I said, I like to really start ramping up my food intake. Training, I always train hard. I enjoy training. So that's kind of increasing, getting a little bit more regimented on my training, and then and more regimented on my diet. So for the first probably 4 weeks will be just ramping up food, growing a little bit before we start bringing it down.
All right, definitely. Listen, Steve, we're going to take a quick break, and when we be back, Sean's going to ask you, how slow is your car really?
Let's do it.
People always ask how I got here. I was willing to work just a little harder than everyone else. Every damn day. If I can have hundreds of hours back, you know I'm gonna grab them. Spending hours prepping chicken, rice, and vegetables, F that. I rely on perfect nutrition. I rely on Trifecta.
All right, we're on with the King Snake by way of Dallas, Texas. Big Steve Kuclo. We were talking about cars, which is Flex's favorite thing next to polishing his Arnold Classic titles over there. And he stole like 5 of those bad boys. It was 5 of them or 4? You got
4. It should have been 5. I should have beat that guy in Columbus.
What's the guy's name? Who was that?
Mike Francois.
Mike Francois.
How could I ever
Remember
forget
him?
his name? Great guy.
Mike Francois won the 1995 Arnold Classic, took it away from Flex, but Flex, you were at a disadvantage.
There. I remember.
I know, but a year before that.
He came backstage because obviously, I had the car accident and I was really sick, and I actually died. I was dieting on a liquid diet because I couldn't handle food yet, right? So I started getting weaker and weaker towards the show. So I literally run off stage and go to the bathroom. I'm peeing, I'm about to puke, and Sean's like in my ear, you gotta fight for this. Don't you want this? And I'm like, dude, I'm about to pass.
I was in it with him. I was in it with him. You talk about Gina. I was in it. This guy was. It was teeter-tottering. He's coming off this car accident. He rolled his car driving 140 miles an hour,
70.
which is 10 miles slower than he normally
70.
drives.
Yeah.
70.
Yeah, and he comes back, and it's like, it's neck and neck. It can literally go either way, and Flex is on the ropes, dude. He's like, you start to see those stars before you throw up.
I literally, like when they call you out for first and second, in between like front double bicep, I'd do my front double bicep and I would literally double over.
Yeah,
I just couldn't handle it. So each pose I was doubling over, and I knew I was losing my condition. But listen, I wanted to ask you, the snake. Where you get that nickname from? Because I call Jake the snake. I'm just curious.
I thought we were talking about cars.
No, I want to switch into the snake. How did you get the nickname the snake? And this is rated R, so come on, let it out.
Yeah,
let the snake out. Let's go.
That goes back to one of my first MD articles ever written about me, and it was something about like King Snake gunning for his pro card or something like that. So I think I back in the day, I was in a Mustang car club, and I had a few Mustang Cobras.
Okay.
And back in the day, when all the message boards were real big for the cars and the bodybuilding, I was on both. So made it easy on myself. I had King Snake on the cars, and I'm like, I'll do King Snake in the bodybuilding forum too.
Okay.
So everybody knew each other when you went to shows and expos, kind of by your internet handle.
Yeah.
And then so that kind of just stuck.
What's funny about that, Steve, is like when we hear young guys like yourself say back in the day.
Yeah.
And then when I think back in the day, I think at least 20 years. So you would have been 15 years old, and Flex and I would have been your age right now.
Yeah, right.
So now, what I was trying to find out, you're 35, we're trying to find a way off the stage. So you want to get an Arnold Classic, hopefully, and naturally that'll set you up nicely for another run at the Mr. Olympia title. But because of the way they're positioning the Arnold this year, let's just say it is in September. It's 2 weeks before the Olympia. Are you jumping in that bad boy?
I would do it. I think it would make sense to go and do it. I think if you're ready, let's rock and roll. I think obviously the prize money's there. It's a great show. It gets a ton of exposure. And it may play an advantage. I think maybe the top 5 guys from last year say, I'm not going to do that show to risk it, so I'm going to just focus on Olympia. So that might create an opportunity to go win one of the big titles.
You could use 2020 as a classic example. Big Ramy winds up in 3rd place, and he winds up finishing the year as Mr. Olympia.
Right.
Who saw that coming? Did you see that coming, by the way? Because I didn't.
I can't say I think any one of those guys were a threat if they showed up 100%. And to me, Ramy showed up 100% and proved that that it was his. He didn't.
So what type of body type are you? I know some people are like repeat offenders, I call them. They can hit multiple shows and get better. I could always do multiple shows and get better. I know Jay was like, no, I can do one and done. So I think it would be great if you were able to go into the Arnold, because for me, I always got better for each show. Are you that type of body type, or?
I am, because I think it gives me an opportunity to make some adjustments, whether I need to fill out a little bit or I need to come down some more. Yeah. And I think that time plays in my favor. To run maybe 4 or 5 shows. I mean, we've done it when going overseas after the Olympia, and that's fun in itself. But I think when you're trying to really peak for individual shows, I can do a few in a row and make the right adjustments to improve for sure.
Yeah, shows after your major show is just kind of like, as runners say, you just want to try to maintain your speed and not decelerate as fast. But going into the show, I always think you can peak and repeat and get better. It's always doing the shows afterwards is super easy.
Yeah, and I think that stress level's down a little bit. I think a lot of that stress and kind of you're bringing it the first time in a while. You've been prepping, so there's a little bit higher stress level. That next show, I'm like, okay, a little more relaxed. Let's, a little more like, okay, I got this.
Steve, how many years have you actually been a pro? You won the USA in 2011?
Yes, sir. So I'm on my 10th year.
Any injuries? I mean, you're a big guy. You've suffered any injuries along the way?
Nothing major, the few nagging things that kind of come along with the territory, some little bit of knee or shoulder pain just from training. So that's what I focused on this last year, 2020. I spent time kind of rehabbing some of my little nagging pain. I wouldn't even call it injury. So I had my shoulder was kind of hurting. So I got some stem cell in my shoulder. I got it into my back. I had about 4 discs that were kind of just, the disc space was degenerative from years of heavy squatting and training. Yeah. So I got injections in there for stem cell in my knees. It improved. My back's the most noticeable right now, and the shoulder's a lot of tissue to improve. So I am seeing improvement there as far as reducing the pain and feeling stronger again. So that was, I think, the benefit to taking that time and focusing on getting my body right to go into this year to be able to compete at 100%.
Is there different types of stem cells? I hear a lot about them, and I'm so curious because I think it can probably benefit a lot of us that don't know anything about it. How did you find out about it? Your research, and which actual version did you go with?
Well, I have a doctor here in Dallas that he's kind of one of the cutting edge guys that not only does the procedures, but he really knows how to do it. And that was important to me because there's so many people out there that say, oh, I do stem cell or I do this or that, but they don't know how to do it. So he actually named Dr. East. So his office is real close to where I live, very convenient. Got introduced to him. He's a big fan of bodybuilding. He actually's done a lot of work for Ronnie Coleman too. So I was like, man, he knows a lot of pro athletes and what it takes and what we put our bodies through. So I, went and met with him, talked to him about it, and he's like, man, I really think you're going to benefit from the stem cell, and they do bone marrow stem cells. So it's not fetal stem cell that they take from umbilical, they take your own. So to me, it's something that your body would less likely to reject if some, foreign stem cell. So it was my own stem cell that ended up, they pull it out of your hip, the hip bone, they extract it, and then they inject it into the areas that you do want it. So, I had my dad did it, and he's 65 years old, and in his knees, he needed surgery. And after doing it, he doesn't need surgery. He's walking fine. Like it's amazing. So I'm a believer for sure.
So subtracting that from your own bone marrow, is the area where they took the stem cells from out of you, is it sore for a while? How does that work?
It wasn't really at all. I think the most pain was when they injected my disc space, like that, because the disc space in your back is real tight. Yeah. So they're putting this very thick fluid, almost like oil-like substance into that disc, and that was extremely painful. I had a hard time walking for about 5 days just because it was just so pissed off after the procedure.
Wow.
Well, Steve, you're on the back nine of your career. You are a veteran at 35 years old. You're right there with William Bonek. We saw Dexter Jackson retire. You're up there with some of the old school guys, the new school guys. You paying attention to them? Hunter Labrada, Nick Walker, Blessing.
There's some good talent coming up. That's for sure. I think a few of them have some refinement to do and have a few years, I think, to kind of maybe find their stride. If they continue the projection they're going, I think they're going to do very well for sure.
Right. So do you worry about any competitors that you're going to compete against, or do you just focus on what you got to do? I know for me, in my ignorance, I always just I got minimum control over myself and my actions. So why in the hell would I worry about somebody else that I have absolutely no control over? Guys talking about you in a magazine and, saying really horrible things, causing you to go to the doctor and stuff like that. But I mean, do you just focus on yourself, or how are you when you approach that?
I'm big at keeping the noise out and focusing on myself. Like you said, you only have control over yourself ultimately during a prep. You don't know what the other guys are doing, nor can you control it. So I really just put my focus into what I have to do. And I think that sometimes I know, okay, certain guys are doing the show, and it does motivate you a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna have some pressure to really. I got to step up my game. I got to bring my A game. But at the end of the day, man, I just focus on what I have to do and just cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and walk on the stage with no regrets. Not saying, man, I should have worked harder, should have did this, that. Yeah, I go into every show and just say, okay, I did it.
So is it going to be a little bit different now? The internet now is very powerful, right? You have your business that you just started. You just said your wife started her business. Is it going to be a little bit different for you to go back into that, what I call hellhole, to be able to create a beautiful thing that's coming out of it, or are you able to shut that down?
Yeah, I am. I kind of work. I'm one of the guys that like to work better under stress. I think I got that from my years in the fire department. I turned pro working on the busiest ambulance in the city of Dallas, working crazy 24-hour shifts. And
all the people that Ronnie beat up, you had to take care of them.
Exactly. So for me, I like being busy. It keeps my mind off man, I'm hungry, I'm tired. I like going, and by the end of the day, when I'm exhausted, I'm just out. So I think that plays in my favor. So I'd rather be busy than kind of sit around and do nothing.
Now, what about products? Are you in the supplement industry yet, or?
We still are endorsed by Allmax Nutrition. We've been with them for the last 6 years. Yeah, it's been a good relationship.
You and your wife together?
Yeah. We've been at the kind of the package deal.
And then you have the clothing thing that you guys are doing. Is that mostly online?
Yeah, mostly online. We did have a store at a mall here in Dallas. Yeah. COVID hit. That kind of effed up all retail, as you know.
Right.
So we've closed that down and just focused on all online.
So, professional bodybuilder, retired EMT. First and foremost, man, kudos to you guys. Unfortunately, those guys have been assisting me throughout a better part of my life. So, man, I mean, just amazing that what you've been able to do as far as your career and everything like that. So now a businessman involved in everything. What's new other than what you're doing now? What's on the horizon that you're thinking of that you want to do?
That's my wife always asks me, because she knows my wheels are turning. I'm like, you know what? It's like you said, I'm in the back nine of my bodybuilding career. And I'm always thinking, okay, what is after this? And everything we do is kind of related in the fitness industry, between promoting our shows, the clothing line, being involved in the supplement side. So it does everything. I think that whatever we do, it's going to be involved in that industry, because I think when the fitness industry kind of gets you, it is the drug of choice that you end up doing your whole life in,
Sure.
And the MPC, the IFBB have been amazing to us, and we love being a part of it.
So obviously you and your wife are a very unique specimen. Are we going to be seeing, just a family running around here? I could imagine any girl that you guys have is going to be amazing, and any boy that you guys are going to have is going to be a pure stud. So what's going on with that situation?
God, that we go back and forth on that, because we have an amazing relationship about, without kids, and right. we get to travel, we got freedom, we get to do everything we want to do, but we know there is, the cool side to being a parent, and especially trying to pass on your genetics and
I think
pass
you
on
guys
what
would be amazing parents.
Thank you. So we're kind of either way. If it happens, we're gonna, we'll take that blessing. If not, then we'll still have an amazing marriage.
Well, you know what they say: if you play Russian roulette, it's a chance one might be in a chamber.
All right, man. Well, I know you're going to get back in the gym and ramp it up. How does that look when you start it up? When you start getting ready, 16 weeks to go, is it a slow build up, or is this something where just you dive in and it's balls to the wall?
I think I would probably, speaking for myself, but I would assume you guys were like it too. I think when you get to this level, you're always kind of living that lifestyle.
Yeah.
You always are training with that thought in your mind of when's the next show, or, when every day it's like, okay, every 2-3 hours I'm thinking about what I got to eat. So even when I'm not competing, I'm always kind of living the bodybuilding lifestyle. So it's not a big 180 change for me to get into the getting the gear as far as prep time. But like for me now, it's just bumping up my training, getting the intensity up a little bit more, getting my food up so I can bring my weight up. And I always hold a fairly good condition. I don't get too far off. So that's why I like to grow into the show. And I sent some pictures to Gina, and she goes, "You're looking clean and lean." So I like that feedback. Nice. When I sent her my first pictures of the prep. So
if my memory serves me correct, I think the Tampa Pro Show is the week after your Texas show. So if you're talking about trying to string something close together, you might have 2 bites at the apple and not have to rely on that, Arnold. All you have to do, Steve, to get back to Olympia is win. And you do have to win.
Let's go.
You know what that's all about, right?
That's right.
We're going to follow your journey all the way back to the Mr. Olympia. It takes place October 7th to the 10th this year in Orlando, Florida. And of course, a lot is at stake, Flex. Big Rami's got to prove himself once again by trying to defend the title. We know Brandon Curry wants to get
Brandon
back.
is definitely wanted back on his heels.
And everybody wants you back in the show. I remember your family being at the Olympia just going ape nuts. They've supported you from day one. Some bodybuilders don't have that kind of family support. So you're in a very good scenario with your family supporting you.
I do bring an amazing crew to the Olympia. Really, all the shows I do, the support system I have has always been incredible and always been kind of a driving force into going into the show. And then when I'm there, they give me that extra energy to be like, man, I'm going to really give it my all. And so going to the Olympia and this year, I kind of look at the Olympia last year and I said, kind of assess things. And obviously Rami was the biggest physique on stage, and there was a lot of smaller guys. Well, they're not smaller, but in structure. I mean, Bonak's not very tall, Dexter, Curry, they're not tall, massive physiques. So to me, I'm one of the only guys that could stand next to Rami and be at the same height and same kind of shoulder structure as Rami. So
Steve, I want you to hold that thought. We're going to go to a commercial, and I want to hear your assessment because I know exactly where you're going with that.
All right.
All right, back with Steve Kuclo. Steve, you're wrapping it up here talking about
you're talking about how you think you're going to hand Rami his ass because you're the same size as him. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Let's hear it.
Let's go. I mean, Rami's the mass monster, and I think he outsized everybody at the Olympia stage. And for me, going into this year, I think I'm one of the only physiques structurally that could stand next to Rami and not look like the odd man out. Like, to me and Rami can stand next to each other to be battle of the giants. So I think it'll be, whoever brings it again 100% is going to be victorious.
That's very reminiscent of 1991 when Dorian Yates stood there with Lee Haney. No one was standing with Lee Haney eyeball to eyeball, shoulder to shoulder. The last time it happened was Gary Strideman and Barry DeMay in 1988.
But they couldn't match him condition-wise.
Couldn't match him on the size, right? And then, of course, in 91, here comes Dorian Yates. you would fare very favorably in that lineup because, like you said, there aren't any guys that are, what are you, 6 feet, 5'11"?
Yeah, about 6 foot, somewhere in there. Yeah.
So what do you think you bring to the table that can compete with Rami or what he doesn't have? Is it condition? Is it flow? Is it posing?
I think my body flows a little bit better than Rami. I think I don't really have any insane like strong points or really weak points. So to me, my body's a aesthetic physique. It doesn't really lack anything. And I think if I bring the package I've improved every year and just continue to improve, I think, standing next to Rami, I could make a serious case to really challenge him for sure.
Yeah, it'll be definitely an interesting show to watch. I know in the absence of Dexter Jackson, when you got sixth place, I think Dexter was fifth place, right, I believe?
Always a threat.
It's going to be a changing, because we got other guys that got to qualify. Ian Valeri won the New York Pro last year. Some other guys could come up that you're going to have to battle through. We got to see you back in the winner's circle. So we're going to follow your journey to the 2021 Olympia, October 7th to the 9th. Make sure your family gets their tickets early.
You know it.
You got any shout outs you want to give before you get to that Olympia?
Man, really all my sponsors, without them, Iron Rebel, Allmax, everybody that supports me, all the fans, you guys are amazing. I appreciate you, Sean and Flex, for having me on, and I look forward to being on the show again as we get closer to the O.
All right,
Definitely.
Big Steve, Flex, that's going to do it for another episode here at Monday Night Muscle. Will join us next week, where we'll be talking more bodybuilding and fitness news as we head to the Mr. Olympia in Orlando. Flex Wheeler, I'm Sean Ray.